economy and the gig culture. And we've got three eminent speakers with us today, and they've all got their experience in the whole the industry, traditional industry, where you talk about, let's say, permanent employment and contractual employment. And they're also played around with the gig economy or the gig culture as we know it. To elaborate, what is the gig economy or what is the gig culture? It is basically a fancy name for what we have been doing in India all these years. So when you hire a bai in your house, the lady who comes to your house, she comes for 2 hours a day, and then she will visit someone else's home for 2 hours or 1 hour or whatever, and she'll keep hopping from house to house. So that is simply put the gig culture, where we will have experienced and highly professional individuals going from organization to organization on a schedule or a timetable, working for that 1 or 2 hours, and charging a fee only for that time. It works well for both because the company is only paying him for the work he is performing at that time, and the person who's offering his services gets to visit many organizations and getting the experience, of course, the exposure, staying relevant. He or she could, obviously boost their own income and get known across a wide range. This system has not gained too much currency in India, mainly because of a certain amount of laws that are in place, which insist that even if the person is on your premises for an hour or two, he or she should get ESI, CPF, etc. So it was some sort of an underground system that was still alive, or at a very high level where you had professions. But today the government has changed the laws with a recently passed social security bill. They have recognized the gig worker or the gigger as somebody who works outside the traditional employer-employee relationship. So it is now, let us say, legal. Coincidentally or interestingly, HTI, my company, had started work on the Collaborate app about 2 months back, before the release of this draft. Not draft, actually, the passing of this diktat. And we were very relevant at that time. So we have set up an app that connects the gig worker, the person who's offering his services on an hourly basis, to an organization using the app. And this is the logo of the app, in fact. And we are having a series of talk shows to tell people about the gig culture, the gig economy, and to spread awareness, to bust some myths that may be there, to tell you the pros and the cons of such a system. And I'll be encouraging the panelists also to speak about the cons, that's not so good side of it. But having said that, whether it's pros or cons, we can't escape it. We'll have to learn to live with it. Like I was talking to someone the other day, and I said the internet, for example, you may say it's good, you may say it's bad, it's done this, but it's a reality. So we have to live with it. So let's take like we say, take it with a pinch of salt and move on. So let me now introduce our panelists. I'll start with Dr. Vikram Kamath, founder chairman of the WITS Kamath Group. The Kamaths and Vikram have synonymous with the hospitality industry. He is an All India National Council Gold Medalist and topper in hospitality and hospitality administration, hotel administration from IHM Mumbai. He is a master's in hospitality from Pune University, and he has received his doctorate in business administration from George Washington University, USA. Vikram launched the full-service business hotel brand WITS at an early age of 22. With properties in Thailand, WITS has gone international. He has played a pivotal role in achieving several milestones at the WITS Kamath Group. F&B, that is food and beverage, is the chain's biggest strength and proud to be known as the food people. So they noticed that there is a gap in the business hotels segment in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, and introduced the group's first ever budget business hotel called Purple Beds by WITS. The Kamath Group is famous for its chain of vegetarian highway restaurants, the VKOFR as we call it. Vikram established the chain's dominance by making it the largest and only vegetarian restaurant chain to be listed on the BSE. That's the Bombay Stock Exchange. They have now forayed into standalone cuisine restaurants through brands like the Urban Dhaba, Pepper Fry, and Wow Malvan. By the way, Pepper Fry and Urban Dhaba have received coveted awards from the likes of the HT Media and others. He was instrumental earlier in setting up the family ventures of establishing the India's first eco-tail chain of 5-star hotels, the Orchid, and they have over 1,000 rooms in Mumbai and other cities. The brand has literally gained cult status today. He has 2 patents applied in his names, and with several awards, prizes, and recognitions. Over the years, Vikram has established himself as an entrepreneur, hotelier, and even an author with 8 books to his credit. I was witness to the way he literally churned out 8 books back to back. Welcome, Vikram, to the show, and looking forward to your insights. I'll introduce Hina Srivastava, an entrepreneur, cognizant leader, critical thinker. She's president of Sri Lanka's, the IWH Powerhouse League, the Sri Lanka chapter. She's council member with Jerson Lehman Group Private Limited. So Hina Srivastava is the founder director of Turnkey Hospitality Pioneers Private Limited. The business offering of turnkey solutions for luxury villas, boutique hotels, and white labels brands in South Asia. Hina brings a history of profitable top line, customer-centric and efficient bottom line strategies, credited with taking different businesses on an ascending trajectory. In simply put, making the business profitable. Leveraging experience across hospitality, luxury, retail, and e-commerce. Hina, so she's moved across various verticals, and Hina's influence shaped fast project growth, brand standard adherence, and revenue-driven results. In her earlier positions, Hina was instrumental in maximizing owner investments, which means profitability, change management, and efficiency optimization. Her association with global giants like the Marriott, Hyatt, Oberoi have imbibed strong learning and a troubleshooter. Hina's early experience spans across business process outsourcing and e-commerce. She's worked in Indian and international markets. Her creative vision across luxury retail saw some tenured and strong partnership ties with iconic luxury brands like Salvatore, Farad. Hina, you'll have to help me out there. Salvatore? Ferragamo. I have to get my Italian practice. And the Cornelli. So that sounds like the Don Corleone family. Omega, Hugo Boss, and Bang & Olufsen, among others. Hina comes with a strong global network across different industries and businesses. Hina holds a bachelor's degree in microbiology from the University of Mumbai and a postgraduate diploma in hospitality from IHM Mumbai. So we've got 3 IHM Mumbais on the panel today. That's me being the third. Hina enjoys being an avid Indian classical dancer, motivational speaker, trainer, and poet in her spare time. When I sent Hina the topic, she did a lot of research and actually sent me a 5-pager on the gig economy and what we need to do. And I told her I'm going to get in touch with her after this show to have a talk about the gig economy, because it was really an eye-opener for me. The third speaker we have is Chef Varun Inamdar, a celebrity chef. Welcome, Chef Inamdar. 2 national award-winning chef, chocolatier, food stylist, author, Guinness World Record holder for largest mud pie, 3,000 pounds. Man, that's a big mud pie. Is fondly known as the Prince of Chocolates and the Bombay Chef. Creator of India's first edible 6-foot chocolate mannequin. That's something. Owns a private gifting label, Barcode, a restaurant brand, Local Mumbai Local Tawa, and the chosen chef for all guests of Prime Minister of India. Digitally, 533 million plus followers reach across the globe via his food shows. So we've got a really nice panel up with us, and I'll introduce myself. I am Dominic Kostoby, Director, Hospitality Training Institute. My company has recently launched Collaborate, the app. Been in the industry for about 30 years, started off as a chef, but not like Varun. I was more into party catering for the, let us say, the middle class and upper middle class. I used to cook the food myself, deliver it, until for about 10 years, I was into hardcore for bulk food operations. And 2002 started HTI. Before starting HTI, by the way, I ruined a couple of restaurants of my own, made losses there, had a lot of ups and downs, and been an interesting roller coaster ride. Now with Collaborate and HTI, looking forward to a bright post-pandemic era. So welcome all of you, and now I'd like to invite our panelists to give us a small brief on their take on the gig economy. I'll start with Hina. So Hina has worked with international brands, and also right now in Sri Lanka. So Hina, if you could give us your take on the gig economy from the perspective of us Indians going international as gig workers. Hina, you're on mute, I think.
Just realized. Sorry. I'll take about 3 or 4 minutes and we'll
Sure.
quickly share my thoughts. Now, everybody who's on board, I presume, knows what a gig economy is. Simply put, it's an open market between buyers and sellers. I'm a buyer, you're a seller, we set a rate, we set a time, we trade. Now, something people don't, or something people misunderstand, that it's very highly technically driven, which is not the case internationally. It's very technically influenced. Uh, that's simply because everybody who's driving the gig economy is very much a transaction based platform. So it's your Amazons, your Airbnbs, your Ubers, and they're all transactional platforms. Uh, Over time, world over, there's been a change in the millennial mind shift. If you look at what our parents traditionally did, uh, they worked secure hours, they worked secure jobs, whether it was governmental jobs in the public sector or private jobs. Today's generation is really, their mindset has changed. They don't want to be this always available worker. They want to have a pre-planned experience and they want to have a choice of choosing what it is. When you look at internationally how that works, it makes it easier. So for example, for our company, for Turnkey Hospitality Pioneers, we are based, our projects are based across international markets. It becomes nearly impossible, especially with the current pandemic that's been ongoing since last year. It's nearly impossible for us to have fixed costs all across the world in different pockets. So gig economy for us works really well because it's cost effective for me as an employer. I'm getting talented, skilled labor willingly. I'm not forcing them to come and work for me. They are coming willingly and wanting to do the project. So there's a lot of self accountability that comes in. Uh, some of the other things that really attract gig economy, there is an openness in the currency you can choose to pay them, or there's an openness in the type of currency that I want to earn. So if I'm a gig worker, I'm not geographically restricted to a certain zone within India, that this is where I have to work and I have to buy my currency or get paid in Indian rupees only. Technology has advanced to a point where you are absolutely able to fly across and get paid, whether it's in euros, whether it's in dollars, whether it's in pounds, or even the Chinese money these days. So that's one of the huge advantages of having gig economy or gig workers across the world. You can sit wherever you are, be talented and skilled, and still be efficient and reward yourself for the skills that you've gained in the early years. Now, these are some of the good things and very attractive. When you look at the package, this is extremely attractive. Something that people don't necessarily realize, and they should be quite mindful about this, is also that gig economy does not give you a stable financial plan. It does not levy a financial system where you've got provident funds taken care of, you've got your old age, social security taken care of, or the company is taking care of your insurances and medical expenses. So as much as you earn in a gig economy, your spends are, your spends pretty much nullify it if you don't know how to save it right, or if you don't know how to invest it right. So, and something in the hospitality industry pertaining specifically is that we gig economy works quite well in hospitality in certain sectors. So what we could look at is outsourcing or using gig workers for things like finance, things like human resource, things like revenue management, because they're cluster based and they have a paradigm that's pretty common across. But you cannot have a 100% dependent hospitality gig economy because you can't guarantee any service consistency. You can't have a new waiter coming in every day or a new housekeeper changing shifts every time. So when you think about these things, it becomes selective on what you can use. As far as India is concerned, I think we have always been in the gig economy for a while. I mean, India has 500 million people who are in, in the supply chain where they can supply themselves as a workforce. And strangely, gig economy, up until the report last year, mid last year, uh, there are just about 3.5 million people who are actually gig workers in India. So you can imagine the disparity between the scope that's available for people to get into becoming a gig worker, bearing in mind that you chalk the right path for being a gig worker. You can't randomly just end up being one. But as far as India is concerned, we are probably looking at growing about, one of the reports I read recently says that we are looking at growing in the next 3 years about 17% in terms of gig economy. So it's going to be a variable jump, a reasonably good jump that happens. And the pandemic has actually made sure that we focus. This is a time that's brought in a lot of stalemates for a lot of people. There's a saying, uh, the pain, if you can't cure the pain, you need to endure it. So if you have to endure it, be opportunistic about it and sell your skills. The market is open. There are buyers
Very
like us.
true. Very true.
Thank you, Dom.
So, yeah. So I've taken some notes, which I'll come back to, Hina. I'd like Vikram to come in now and give us his take on the gig economy, but from the owner perspective. That means he runs several hotels. He is helping others as a consultant to run their hotels and advising people either on a friendly or paid basis. I know he does that. So, Vikram, what would your take be from the hotel perspective or a restaurant perspective? And how could they, let's say, lower maybe their fixed costs of expenses and move it maybe to a variable cost? Is it practical? What are the challenges that they would face in a nutshell?
So I'll take the last part of it. You said in a nutshell. So I'll be a little bit brief and terse. I think there's a huge opportunity when it comes to the gig economy. Obviously, I think here I a little bit disagree with Hina. I think there's opportunity in all aspects, in all departments also, right from housekeeping to service to front office. Because today, especially with fluctuating occupancies and with the kind of things we're seeing, for example, in banquets today, more than 50 people banquet is not allowed, or certain type of functions only in outdoor lawns are allowed. So because of this change in the entire scenario, no hotel or restaurant wants to incur any kind of fixed cost. And this is where stewards, kitchen staff, housekeeping staff who may be looking for temporary employment. And even the hotel is looking for somebody who has a temporary employment, either assignment based, like for a particular day, or let's say during a particular wedding for 3 days. So this opportunity can be there, which these team members can also take advantage of. And as Hina rightly said, they can encash their skills. They may already be a skilled worker, a good housekeeping person, a good service person, or even a marketing professional. Today, we are used to seeing gig economy, especially when it comes to marketing, finance, or HR. But these departments like service, like housekeeping, kitchen, they have a huge demand, which because there was no bridge or there was no good way to contact these particular individuals that I have this function available on so and so date. See, traditionally, hoteliers like us were doing it what? Your past employees there, people have worked with us. Arey, usko phone maar, isko phone maar. See if that fellow is available. Nowadays, chalo, you'll make some WhatsApp group. But this was the old way. But that is your limited pool. You have 10x employees. Some employees got jobs somewhere. Somebody's got. So it's a very inefficient process. So definitely, as the process gets better, like Uber and Ola have got taxi people on one particular thing. So many websites are there, like freelancing people for marketing and stuff and all, which has brought other freelancers on a platform. Definitely, skilled workers of our industry definitely can encash their skills because there was no common platform where they could come. They were restricted only to the hotel owners or the F&B managers or the chefs who they knew who contact them when any requirement comes up. So definitely it's a huge opportunity which should be encashed, and there's a big need because staffing is always is like you're always short of staff in India. Dominic, you're on mute. Dominic, you're on mute.
So I picked up something there. Sorry, yeah, I said thanks. I picked up something which I'll come back to for you also. But right now, I'd like to take Varun on and ask him for his take. So, see, Varun, you are a one-man show, I'm guessing. And how would you look at it for another person? Because a gig worker is, the way we speak, I mean, in the practical definition of it, it's a one-man brand, right? Or a one-woman brand, to be politically correct. So, do you think people would find it easy to create their own brand, not just nationally, but internationally, like you have done? And if it is difficult, what are the areas that they should focus on? To make it easy, what could they do? How is the income revenue? Your take on that part for a gig worker going international and individually?
I got that question. Hi, this is me, Varun Namdar. For all of you who do not know me, I understand it's very, very, very difficult to create yourself as a brand. See, I understand when you are working with a company or when you're creating a company, you have multiple people to assist you, you have multiple people to guide you, you have multiple people to fall back upon. But when you are working as a brand yourself, then a lot of people have to find the kind of faith or have to trust you from the core of the association. Now, it's important to first understand what are the primary pillars of a gig economy. If I can just elaborate that, and if I can just, just four of these terminologies or four of these words, and it becomes very easy. The first one is that it's a free market system, which is very important for us to understand. We can also associate freely and the others can associate freely with us. So that's one. Second, that it's a temporary positionary job, which is very important for all of us to understand, because then you are not on a consistent payroll or you're not on a payroll, right? It's a temporary position that you hold. Your job is done. Your financials are sorted, and that's about you and that person being associated. The third one is it's all about hiring independent workers. And fourthly, it's a short-term commitment, which again is very important for all of us to understand. Now, when we think of all these things, it in a way is a win-win for all parties concerned. I remember when we were studying in college, we used to get this one list every evening, which used to ask for all of us to willingly put our names in that list. And that list used to be the waiting list. Now, that waiting is very different from the waiting list that the world understands. This is a waiting list, as in a list of waiters who are, yeah, I know Dominic is laughing already because he knows what I'm speaking about. So this is a list where students at will put their names as waiting staff for evening events. So that categorically would be a 7 to 12 or a 7 to 1 in the morning kind of an event where you wrap things up, you go back home, next morning you're back to college. So this is like the classic gig in the hospitality world. Now, having said all of this, the work from home culture that has suddenly been trending all of 2020 is the classic case of gigger or a gig economy, because there you're not bound by demographics. Now, in the realms of all these things, it's very difficult to create a brand image because that can only be created with consistency. Now, you can perform to the best of your ability in one of the gigs. Possibly in the second gig, you may not be able to give 100%. Or maybe in the third gig, you give 200% of your job. Now, there is constantly that phase where it could be either inconsistent or perfect. There can never be a serious attestation to it, right? So that's one. Also, I would like to add one thing here is it's not always about cutting costs, like how, we all talk about constantly. Gig economy is not about engaging with multiple people just because you want to cut costs, or not just because you want to cut on your overheads. But some people are also of a very different mind. They want to deliberately associate with different people at different points in time. The classic example of this is me. A brand wants to associate with me, wants me to be the face of their brand, wants me to talk about their brand for a certain period. Once our engagement is done, I move on to another brand, they move on to another chef. Right? Now, here what happens for possibly see the engagement, if it's for a year, for that 1 year, they extract the best creative things from each other. and then they move on with a new mind coming in, with a new chef coming in, new ideas come in, new approaches come in, new set of engagements come in, new set of people come in. So that also is a very big variable. And I think that is where brands keep changing faces or keep changing endorsement deals. So I think this is something which is very important for all of us to understand. Another thing, a report has just come out yesterday. I don't know if anybody has read it. It's a report by the Associated Chambers of Commerce and Industries of India, ASSOCHAM. And this report says that the gig economy from 3.5 million has risen up to 15 million in India. And this is all through the pandemic. And I'll send you the report, Dominic, and you can send it to everybody who's taken the time out to hear us today. I'll send that report to you. While US, I think it's 53 million, which is half of the population. India from 3.5, like rightly said earlier, has now increased to 15 million, which is a huge jump. It's almost 5 times, which means that we are on the right track of being possibly a country of gigs or giggers, if I can get it straight.
Right. So now an open question to the entire panel, and taking off from what Varun last said, is that, it's a temporary assignment. There is no commitment. I'm going to give it a little spin here. Is it, and I'm playing, I won't say devil's advocate or even the angel in this game. I'm just saying, is it something like, dating, where there is no commitment from either side, and as long as it is working, you stay together? How does it sound there in that case? Would you like to have, because in India we are very marriage committed and long term, and earlier it used to be the what, how do you call it, the government jobs, then it became private job you need, today this gig. So how do you take, I mean, is any of you, what's your take on it? Go ahead,
If
Varun.
I can jump in and take the bullet. The gig economy has played a big and serious role in Indian weddings. Now, traditionally, and Hina also rightly said that, the older generation has always been keen on government jobs which are confirmed, jobs where there is some level of standard, कि हाँ चलो पैसा है, गाड़ी है, चलो ये चल रहा है, वो चल रहा है, mutual funds है, there's that, stability. So stability was a very big thing. And when you talk about dating and things like that, I'm sure that's also one of the aspects that needs to be looked into, yeah. Because otherwise, this is a country where marriages have always always happened keeping stability in mind. Government jobs, private jobs, this sector, that sector, doctor hona chahiye, engineer hona chahiye. Now suddenly when you say, oh, he's a musician, he's a jazz player, or he's a jazz artist, or he's a chef, oh, he doesn't work with the Oberoi or the Taj. He freelances. Oh, he works on the television. The next question, okay, I understand he works on the television, but what does he do?
This sounds like the interview in Sholay with Masi and Amitabh.
True.
So, Vikram, you mentioned about, I'm taking a slant here. You mentioned about, you hiring a waiter, and Hina said maybe you can't do that. So to both of you, let us say you do hire a waiter, you don't hire a waiter, whatever. What about the waiter himself? Is there any growth path for him? Would he move to, let's say, being a captain, a manager? How does he grow?
Like you said, if the dating goes off well and you fall in love, you end up getting married.
Okay, so you're saying the company would offer him a full-time job then?
If you don't fight while you're dating, then you get married. No? So it's like that. So,
okay, what if he doesn't want the commitment? What if he doesn't want to be married, or she doesn't want to be married and would like to just be a gigger? Could they grow?
Of course, there's nothing wrong in that. You can still be, I'll give you an example. Even though in a relatively, when Varun said there is short duration, definition of short is very, very, very relative, exactly. So if you're one of the best pastry chefs and you're working in Oberoi, they contract you only for 2 or 3 years. Okay. And if you're some other cruise line chef and again, very good in your job, they take you for 1 year. So I think they're also gig economy in some sense. Like Varun said, they're not permanent. Okay. True. And I think this whole thing stems from people having a permanent job in terms of fear of redundancy. And I think that the most important thing that one needs to do is improve their skill set, be up to date, and the fear of redundancy should not be there. Everybody has this mindset. I think I and you, Dominic, only once discussed. I think while we were writing Sales Magic as the book or something, I remember for some reason us discussing that people have this conception. I think it was with you only when we were talking about trainers and having an office. And everybody thinks that if the guy doesn't take a bag and go every morning at the same time at 9 o'clock to work, that means he's jobless. I think we only discussed a long time ago. So family members have that feeling. Mothers, fathers, or wives have that feeling that if you, oh sorry, I'm very being stereotypical. Wives have that feeling, but anyway, whatever. There's that feeling that if he doesn't go to job every morning, get up at 9 o'clock, 8:30, doesn't get ready, 9 o'clock, doesn't go to job, doesn't come back at more or less the same time every day, means he's jobless. I think these are traditional ideas which we have been exposed to through media, as in through TV or old norms, or because we have seen our parents work that way or our grandparents work that way, and that has got somewhere fixated in our mind. I think the future is, and most of the European countries or America, and that is the Americas and Europe and most of these economies, or even forget in Asia, if you go, where the population in most of these countries is very small, they are used to working on a part-time basis or on a non-committed basis, where it is assignment based or activity based. They do that work, like to give the example of the buy. So it is not that this concept is new, but yes, to our industry, it is new. And overall to our economy, definitely it is new. Certain pockets have been using it, but traditionally, especially for our parents, having a so-called stable job and a fixed income monthly is basically a fear of redundancy.
Okay, so what you are saying is that they would take a job, a permanent job, out of fear of redundancy. Would it be also for a reason of security? And would the gig economy or a gigger working in this, would they be, how would I say, insecure in their feeling, or should they have reason to be insecure? If yes, how could they avoid insecurity?
No, not at all. See, I think today, look at, again, I come back to the example I gave of Uber or Ola. Today, Uber, Ola keeps them busy the whole day. So they don't have any fear of joining or being not being permanent anywhere. Basically, people want to ensure that they earn a certain amount, whether they earn it from one company or from 10, but they want the ability, or the fear should not be there that I will be sitting at home when I want to work. As long as there is work available for me, people will be happy joining the so-called gig economy or whatever. Basically, people want to earn, and a good platform to get them where whenever they decide to work, they get work. They'll do it. Look at Ola, look at Uber. It's keeping whoever wants to be busy. You decide to check out at night. I want to work only 2 hours, work 2 hours. You want to work 8 hours, you want to work 24 hours, you work 24 hours. So whenever I decide to work, whether it be a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 3 in the morning, 4 in the night, whatever, people should have the option available. And then that fear will come out from their mind because they can be busy.
Okay. So I'm going to give a
Dominic, if I can add
go ahead.
there, considering, I'm from the kitchen space, a lot of functions in the kitchen or at events, or, since you have had a catering background, you would also resonate with me when I say a lot of jobs in the kitchen, especially to do with events or festivals or, things like these, are all done by giggers. 70% of the talent that comes on board, whether it's a regional cook or a chef or a musician or a caterer, waiting staff, bartender, hosts, halwai, tandooriya, any specialized cook, whether it's a biryani cook or a Lucknowi cook or any regional cook for that matter, most of these things, or even panwalas for that matter, right towards the end of an event, while you're exiting, you have this panwala traditionally. All these are in a way gig workers because they are all there engaged for a particular time period.
Very true.
Right? In fact, I started as a gigger right since I was in college, because the first job that I did as a part-time working student was of a dishwasher. So when I started working at a restaurant in Bandra, purely because of the fact because they wanted to show me away. The only statement that they made was, dishwasher ka job hai, karna hai? So I said, haan, karna hai. They thought I'll run away. But I did it up. I took it up. I did it for almost a year and a half. So much so
as a dishwasher,
almost for a year and a half. And somewhere in the middle of that year and a half, one of the team members had not turned up on that evening, and he was a fondue maker, one of the only few fondue restaurants in the city at that point in time. And I remember raising my hand and saying, "Main kar sakta hai, mujhe aata hai." So they said, "Chal, you're on the pot wash, you can't be cooking." I said, "Hey, listen, I know how to cook. I can do it." So I went up to the range, I cooked that fondue and I served it to the owner. And he was so impressed that he actually called me out. And that's where, of course, I got a raise, I got a package, I got a little bit of a confirmation, chalo, we are not going to throw you out. So, when we're talking about security and insecurity and fear of redundancy and things like that, I think it's purely talent based. Because if you have the skill set, if you have the talent, then why will anybody say no to hiring you or rehiring you or redeputing you or keeping you in a position? I know so many of these gig workers who've become confirmed workers over the years. So that also works. Like I said, it's purely talent-based, skill-based, and it's also about that will. Because eventually, whether you want to work as a gig worker or you want to work as a confirmed staff, it's your will. It's about what you discuss with your boss sitting across the table.
True. So Hina, on this,
I think Hina's been there. Hina's been trying to come in. Sorry.
I was just about to bring her in. Hina, you are in Sri Lanka. You are white labeling hotels, and would you consider hiring a gig worker, or are you already hiring gig workers? What is their future in it, and would they be able to sustain their family or their profile?
So adding on to what both Vikram and Varun have shared, I think there's an important aspect. Your initial question was, does a gig worker feel he or she can grow in life? And what are the tools that's available? Now, let me just go back there and then tie it into what we do here. One aspect gig workers need to realize is, if you want to grow, you need to parallelly educate yourself. Now, when you talk about being a gig worker, if you look at 70% of the gig jobs, they are at a ground base. So you'll have cab drivers, you'll have the cooks who are working at the base level, the waiters. We are asking people, or people who are doing the gig jobs are people who have started from ground up. Is there a route that is designed for them today to work together or train them and help them climb the ladder up? No, there isn't. Vis-a-vis, if you work at a hotel, a branded hotel, you start off as a waiter. There is a program. There's a corporate training program. There's a management training program. There are lots of available options where the company is investing in teaching you something. Is there something parallelly available for gig economy in any strata of work today? No, there isn't. So until you decide to educate yourself and enroll yourself into learning and moving to the next step, growth in gig economy as a base level worker to climbing up the rung would be slower than traditional work. Coming to your question, how does it operate outside of the country? And there are a lot of cultural differences. We also need to understand India is a country of 1.2 billion people, out of which 500 million are available as a supply chain for various kinds of jobs in the market. Sri Lanka on its own has got less than 25 million as a whole country's, as a whole island's population. So when you compare the two, gig jobs here are taken, regular jobs here are taken purely at will. In India, if you choose not to show up at your work, or if you choose to have poor performance, I will have 10 people waiting in queue to replace you. In countries that have smaller population strengths in general, that isn't the case. So to answer your question, whether gig economy works very openly here, it's not very easy. If you're thinking that, in a population of less than 25 million for the whole country, the strength that can provide the labor force would be between 70%, 65 to 70%. Now that is also staggered over different ages. So does somebody want to show up as a waiter? Yes, people want to show up as a waiter. Will they show up? Definitely when you ask them to. There is no guarantee. So in economies where the populations are less, especially in Sri Lanka, it is safer and more reliable to have somebody on your payroll for jobs that need consistency. Now, we don't have we outsource things like human resource, we outsource things like accounts, we outsource things like revenue management, marketing, digital marketing. Why? Because these are things that can be coordinated by somebody sitting in any part of the world. You could be in Netherlands, you could be in Switzerland, you could be in Australia, any part of the world, and you can coordinate all of these jobs. But ground level jobs, it's difficult. It's a lot easier in India. I've worked for several years in India across different organizations, different hotel organizations, different luxury I've worked with luxury brands and a whole lot of other portfolios. The very advantage that we are a population of 1.2 billion, two, uh, we have an innate, we are taught from childhood the benchmark as a child you're given. I remember I was given a benchmark as a child. You should be a doctor. Is there a reason that I have to be a doctor? No, there isn't bloody any reason that I don't have to be a doctor. Was there a choice? You could be a waiter, you could be a hostess. Did anybody tell me, oh, you could go stand on the mandir and dance and get some money? Nobody gave me that choice. So we benchmark our children by telling them your choice is being a doctor, being an engineer, being a techie, going and ruling the world. Yes, top 25 CEOs of global corporations are Indians. I'm bloody proud of it. But that's because we are told that, listen, your options are starting from rung 9 of the ladder, not from ground level. And the gig jobs are at the ground level. So the variance in getting from rung 1, the ground rung, until the 9th rung, where our parents or our families put the expectation bubble on us, it's not something that you see outside. In India, it's a lot easier to get people to do things. People are available. It's not the same with countries outside for various other reasons. So it's a very culturally dependent and mindset dependent economy outside of it.
Got it. So what we're saying is that in countries like India, where the population is high, the gig culture would be more prominent in ground level jobs.
Yes.
And in the, let's say, the developed countries, or where their population is a lot lower, like you would then, keep the ground level people permanent and move the higher level jobs out, which could come then to India. It's time now to take some questions from the participants, the attendees. And we've got one from Rahul Chawla. Do the panel members really think a gig worker can sustain himself or herself with the income generated from gig work? Is there enough demand for gig work? I'm sure he's speaking in the Indian context, but let's keep it open to international also. So any of you could take it, and requesting if we can keep them short, because there's another question after that also, and I'm sure more will come. Participants,
I'll go ahead. I'll go ahead. I think yes, definitely they can sustain themselves. I think Hina made a very, very good point. One is to understand that yes, you need to be a little bit more independent minded, and you need to be a little bit self-motivated compared to when you're an employee. So you need to train yourself, upgrade your skills. That aspect definitely you need to do on your own, because being a gig worker, there may not be that much responsibility towards you from the company perspective, which you'll have to work harder for, to gain that acceptance. So that's a very good point. Obviously.
So you're saying that the onus
yes.
of training, the onus of being trained or getting upgraded is on the gig worker, no longer on the company.
I'm not saying about, I wouldn't say upgrading or training. I would say the onus of the skill, whether that's upgrading, downgrading, lateral grading, is really depends on the job skill you're in. If for example, you're very good, you're an accounts guy, then, and you know certain things, whether if you don't know Excel, you know Tally, but you don't know Excel. Now, is that an upgrade or is that a downgrade? I really don't know. But you need to do what allows you to be more employable, definitely. Yeah, what is required. So your skill level needs to improve.
So your answer is yes, a person could earn from the gig economy, and yes, there is work for a gigger.
I fully agree.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And again, I go back to my example of Ola and Uber.
True. So this one's from Mark. Is there scope for gig jobs in hotels for untrained 50 plus people? So would a 50 plus person get a job if he is untrained in the hospitality segment? And I can see Vikram smiling, but Hina wants to take that.
I think
I think Hina would like to take it.
Go ahead.
No, Hina, let's hear your take.
Okay, I'm going to be very straightforward. And you said it was Mark.
Untrained, right.
Mark, at this point, my answer to your question is an absolute no, simply because pandemic has changed a lot for everybody. At the moment, there is young, skilled, technically trained, environmentally trained labor out in the market who's waiting for places to open up. So unless there's a portfolio, that requires something like a CSR, something which is non-technical. In a non-technical role, there's a possibility, a CSR department or something that has no technical skills required. But otherwise, it would be difficult in the current situation with the offset of the pandemic that happened. Vikram, what do you think?
Well, I feel there's a lot of potential for people. In fact, please send me your CV. I'll give you a job right away, because I think there's so many roles. In our cloud kitchen, we had somebody who's been retired for the last 5 years. He was a steward so I don't know when, but he's untrained. And we made him a cashier in one of our cloud kitchens because he could read, he can write. He just has to stand at the counter the whole day and fire an order. I mean, he can read and write. What else do you want? That's a skill. We take for granted many skills. If you can read and write in English, okay,
that is a skill.
And you can touch, and you can use your mobile phone, which is basically what the point of sale is. You just have to punch the order. The order comes from the online platform. You fire the order, and you have to put it in, wrap it in a brown bag. It's not a very complicated job, but yes, you have integrity. That's a skill which we cannot give you. He had integrity of so many years, and so he got employed. So that is also a skill. Your ability to read, write, excel. You don't take for granted that you're not trained. Maybe you're trained. So there are many. We have one role in banquets, which are again done by somebody who's very old, and his only job is to stay till 2 in the morning. That's also a skill.
True,
because he has
I completely agree with what Vikram is saying. And having said that, I don't deny the fact that Hina has said whatever she has said, but there are a lot of roles in the parlance of a hotel functioning, which can be done by anybody who's unskilled. Yeah, what is the skill of a doorman?
So there's no unskilling. I'm arguing on that only. There is no unskilling.
All he has to do is
there's
wish.
no unskilled semi-skilled.
Absolutely, all he has to do is wish, greet, smile, open the door, and I think that's the biggest skill. Yeah.
And anybody who's married is used to smiling, greeting, and keeping people happy.
Vikram, I have to play safe.
See, even if there is an usher at a restaurant, a job of an usher at a restaurant.
Agreed. Any non-technical skill, it'll be easier to get. But technical
absolutely. And see, even if somebody like that, and Vikram very rightly said, with full integrity comes and asks for a role in the kitchen, there are a lot of roles in the kitchen that really do not require skill sets. So with a little bit of brushing here and there, with a little bit of hand holding, 3-4 days in the kitchen, and the person will even start making pasta bolognese.
Okay, so I'm going to combine two questions. I'm going to combine two questions and put it to Varun, because he's actually a gigger, I would say. So Varun, is there a fixed fee per hour? Although this question was for Vikram, so I'm putting it to you. Is there a fixed fee per hour for a gig in the gig economy? One, and second is, how do you ensure you get paid? Because there is no there's no written contract, etc. And I'm sure you've dealt with people who are maybe tardy with their payment or denying your payment. So
see, I'll make it very easy. The chances of being cheated are the highest. And there's nothing that you can really do about it, unless what I started doing a few years back is I take my monies 100% in advance.
Okay.
Having said that, I am also engaged for 250 days in a year. So for me, that becomes mandatory more than anything else, because I don't have the time, patience, and skill to keep following up with every event that has already wrapped up. Because what happens in the event space, people are constantly working, people are constantly moving from one event to another, one function to another.
True.
Now, if I'm engaging myself with Dominic, and tomorrow if I'm working with Vikram, and day after if I'm working with Hina, the whole point is the 45-day credit period really doesn't work with me, because Dominic may forget me after 45 days. So may Vikram and so may Hina. And suddenly they may say, Acha, that event, acha, haan, right. Oh, I did 40 events between that event and your payment day. Yeah? So for me, it's very simple, boss. I charge 100% in advance, because that really puts me at ease, that keeps me at bay.
Okay.
So that's something that
just one thing that I'd like to add here is, on the app that we have created, Collaborate app, we are going to be helping out both the gigger as well as the organization hiring them, because there is going to be a record of the agreement made between them on the fees, and both sides get to rate each other. So if, for example, I work for Varun and Varun doesn't pay me on time, I'm going to give him a bad rating, which is going to affect the other giggers who are joining him. At the same time, if I take up a job from Varun and I don't do it properly, Varun is going to be giving me a bad rating, which is going to affect my branding and my possibility of getting a gig job going forward.
But Dominic, when you say that, let me also add to it. A lot of people give you bad ratings also just for the sake of it, just
Very
because
true,
they
but
want to
then,
kind of spoil
but
your
the-
credentials in the market.
correct. So then
And
the average
Zomato
out.
is the biggest portal that I may say where there is no redressal forum. Now, suppose,
True.
and
I
Vikram
get
will
what you're saying.
resonate when I say this. If I order from one of the restaurants of Vikram's and I don't like the food, or I don't like the chef, or I don't like the steward, I can just go up to Zomato and write the most ridiculous review.
Very true.
And there is no redressal forum, because Zomato will not pull it down. But that brings your rating down from 5 to 4 and from 4 to 1.
So what we have done in this rating system, by the way, Varun, is we are also going to allow people to see which organization has rated which steward at what level. And we're also going to allow the steward to see which people have rated them. So for example, if I work for Vikram and his, let's say his particular department is treating people badly, that segment will get lower rating. So, you're going to identify where the problem is for both the organization to clean up their act and for the gig worker. I'd like to move on because of time. And there's a question from Bhuvan Gujar. And I'd like you, Jervis, could you unmute him and let him ask the question? Because I want the tone also to come into the... Mr. Bhuvan, would you like to speak up? Go ahead. You can unmute your mic. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is to any of the panelists. He's a hospitality graduate, ideally completes his course at the age of 21. And he has a very different career aspiration compared to his previous generation. One of the very strong things that comes out from these graduates is that they have a very strong passion to pursue their dream. Along with that, they want a very great work-life balance and a lot of self-time. And at the same time, they have a very, very high aspirations in terms of achievement goals are very high. So in this context, what is the right age for them to become a gig, take up the gig employment?
In my opinion, 12 years old.
Bhuvan, sorry, what's that? I missed it.
In his opinion, it's 12
Start
years.
when they're 12 years old. Start early. The gig economy for 12 is booming now. Look at all the multi-millionaire 12-year-olds we have. Yeah.
No, I mean, if I get the tone of Bhuvan's question, I think he's very specifically relating that at a certain age bandwidth in your life, you need to stabilize and have, like a growth career span, like a peaking career span. Bhuvan, is that right? Is that what you're asking?
Exactly, because it also has to match with their career aspirations.
Okay, so very quickly, like Vikram said, you can start at 12 and you can end up being, and you can probably retire at 30. That's one option. But in case if you are currently not in that bracket, uh, the early on working for somebody else or working for another company is not a bad culture. What it does is it pretty much cultivates and teaches you. It gives you the foundation and the training to grow to a particular point in life. And it gives you experiences that you might not have in a traditional gig life where you're not associating with peers and colleagues and bosses and projects and things like that. If you're already in the age bracket, the reason I took this question is because I am in an age bracket where I've had a substantial career working for somebody else, making somebody else, quite a few others rich, and then decided, hell, I'm really good at this. Why am I doing it for someone else? Why not for myself? And all I did was, like you have those selfie cameras, I was taking somebody else's picture and I said, that's it, I'm swapping the camera and going to make it look at me. So there is no particular age group. I started at an age when everybody, or a large part of my friend circle and people who know me, my colleagues, they kind of discouraged in a certain way, saying you're making a mistake. If you don't crack it now, you're going to lose everything that you worked for the last 20 years. That's untrue. That's untrue. The experience I gained in the last 20 years actually became the foundation at the backbone for making good. The wisdom that came through in those last 20 years was the backbone in making this turnaround. So if you have the right experience, 35 to 40 is a good time for you to try out. Set yourself a goal. Set yourself a timeline goal, whether it's 18 to 24 months usually is a reasonable time in this age bracket to understand whether you enjoy it first. It's not easy. We make it sound like gig is, oh, you can just do it like this. It's not. In a gig economy, the buck stops at you. You can't point, you can't say ki boss ye karega. You can't go and complain to somebody else. There's no HR to listen to your grievance. You do everything on your own. So
Okay, so we've got two sides of the discussion. One is Vikram, who says at 12, and Hina, who says 35. Just to let you know, Bhuvan is the principal of APJ, Institute of Hotel Management, and a very good friend of mine. He's talking from the perspective of all his kids out there are probably jumping at the gig concept. And I know for a fact that he's writing an article which should be out shortly on the gig economy. So he may end up quoting you all also. Anyway, we're running out of time, but there was a hand up for Roshan Toscano. I think I know him, but I'm not sure. If he still wants to ask his question, because I think that's the last question we'll take. Jarvis, just unmute Roshan. Roshan, would you like to speak up? Jarvis, have you got him? Yeah, Roshan, go ahead and ask your question. You need to unmute yourself. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, Dominic. Roshan here. You must be knowing me from the Azure.
Yes, exactly. I was wondering about this. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Presently, I'm working as a supply chain head in a reputed organization. My question is, can we become a gig worker while doing our current job? Is that the correct, or is that the ethically?
Okay, so Roshan is in supply chain. He's a veteran in supply chain, I would say. And he's asking if he should be exploring it while in his current job. Is it ethically right, morally right, or
yes.
morally defensible? So I'll let one of you take it and then we'll close the discussion. I see Varun's hand up.
Dominic?
Yeah, go ahead, Varun.
As long as one is not in conflict with their current job role, current profile, in conflict with the same brand, the same kind of space, I think you're at will to do anything. Yeah, you can work as a musician after your work hours. Who's stopping you? As long as you're not buying the similar brands for another competing company as a purchase manager, you can do anything. You can work as a part-time chef. You can work as a musician. You can work as a driver. You double up as a finance guy or a CA. You're at will to do whatever you want to do. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just add there, Roshan, you'd need permission from your organization to be on the right side of the track. And like Chef said that as long as you're not in conflict of interest, which they would check out. Okay, let's do one thing. Unmute Siddharth also, Jervis. We'll just push our luck with the time. Jervis, unmute Siddharth. Yeah, go ahead, Siddharth. You would need to unmute yourself now. He's allowed you to. And Jervis, keep Sufiani Neil on standby also. We'll take his question also. Siddharth, unmute yourself. No luck with the technologies. What about Sufiana Lee? Any one of them, if you can unmute, and whoever speaks up first, we take it. Syed. You'll need to unmute yourselves on your... Yes, go ahead, Sufyan.
Good evening, sir. So my question to you and the panelist is how much the app would charge? Because,
okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so see the app for an organization per address when they're onboarding is 4,750 for the whole year, which is about 400 rupees per month. And for a liberated associate, we're calling the gig workers a liberated associate, it's only 250 per year. It comes with a lot of features and facilities, and I'll be very transparent here. We are having a little resistance even despite this small amount, and I would like to say that we are not going to be marketing your data. We are not going to be compromising your data that you share with us. And that is why you're better off paying us this small fee. The app is in the beta stage where we are only inviting people who are, how would I call it? We are only inviting people we know. We are not putting it on the Google Play Store. The beta version means it's in internal circulation. We should be ready to go alpha as in the main app. We should be ready within, say, about 3.5 to 4 months. The app is really state of the art, if I should say so myself, in terms of you are allowed to communicate with each other. There's an option for bidding and offers. You can check out each other's CVs. You can check out the organization CV. The organization can check out your CV. We will be building in features where they can pay you directly. And we are not taking any commissions. We are not going to be in between. You deal directly with each other. And one more feature of the app, besides the rating system, is we are going to be allowing a barter. So, for example, if there's a resort, it could offer you a payment, part of your payment as a holiday, or if you're dealing with a restaurant, they could offer you part of your payment as a meal for two or whatever, which you could offer to your family. I hope that answers your question. We'll take the last question, and if Siddhartha is off mute, we'll take his question. Thank you, Sufyan. I think we're still not having luck with Siddharth. Okay, no. Siddharth, you need to unmute your microphone on your own device. No luck there. We've got a couple of questions on the chat box also, but I don't think we have time for that. I'd like to stick to the time. So there's something about story behind Vittal Vada, please. And if you can send us your this, we'll send you that. Is there any way to ensure that I will get paid? We've done that. Okay. So now closing statement. I'd like one of the panelists to do a sort of a summary of the entire gig. Like in 2 minutes, and then we'll close. Or let's do all the panelists.
I'm still here. I'll just get the video off.
So let's get everyone, all three panelists' view on the gig this in about a minute or two, and then I'll do my closing. So we'll start with Varun. Varun, could you give me your closing statement?
See, like I said even earlier, in fact, I would not like to sum it. I would just like to add one little tangential thing to it, which is the gig performances of today's times, which is also very fondly known as quid quo pro. Now, quid quo pro is something that we really don't give too much of attention to, or we do not really give so much of importance to. But in today's time, that's where most of the world revolves around. And that is about a favor or an advantage that is being granted in return for something that you do. For example, staycation was something that was trending on social media, all of 2019. What is a staycation? Staycation is a form of a gig, because the celebrity is being invited for a weekend or an extended weekend, and in turn they do a lot of social media postings, they do a lot of social media promotions. Now that is gig marketing. So something like this should also, this also kind of entails the gig economy, because that's also something that's very important, because it's not about paying a celebrity always, it's also about the barter that you were rightly speaking about, Dominic.
Thanks, Varun. Hina?
I think I'm just going to sum it up with the way forward that should be. For gig economy to sustain, we need to have some kind of a social security net. Giggers at the moment are pretty much like orphans running around like headless chickens. They are enjoying it because, they have the time and the space. But if we need this economy to work, then it needs to have structure. There needs to be some kind of a benefit fund on lines of a provident. There needs to be a social security net that comes in. If you're going to be a gigger, you need to understand that, when there's a retirement age, so called, you need to build that retirement surplus for your old age. And that's not going to happen with an unstructured environment. So until the reforms come in, it'll be difficult to sustain this as a parallel economy.
Okay, got that. And Vikram, you have the last word.
Thank you. I think I'm going to just sum it up by saying it's a great time to be part of the economy as a whole, especially the gig economy. There's a huge opportunity and potential, especially when it comes to hospitality, because more than ever, hotels have moved out from their own rigid mindset, which they were rigid for so many years. Today, they are more open than anybody to work with gig workers. Whereas, traditionally all the hotels were of a fixated mind on so many things. Today, hotels, restaurants, all of them are open-minded, which is a huge opportunity for all kinds of gig workers, right from musicians, food festival-related chefs, cuisine-related experts, service persons, like we were talking about, the cashier and all, which I was telling you. Today, if you're on 31st night, and for that one day you need, you are expecting a surge of orders because of curfew. So you don't want a permanent cashier. Maybe you want somebody just for that 1 day or 2 days. So this is a huge opportunity, which I think everybody can encash. And knowing that few college professors are also there on this, we must encourage students to change their mindset, where at a young age, they should also not feel that, oh, I should only get into this management trainee program and that management trainee program. Why can't they be experts at something? Today, Varun is a good example. Why can't they be experts at something? Whether it be kitchen, even it could be a steward. Today, a flair bartender is in great demand for only 1 or 2 parties or for a wedding, which is again a kind of gig economy. He's not a steward, he's a specialist. He's a flair bartender or a great mixologist or a great cocktail specialist. And it's an opportunity for students and people to really pursue their dreams, because there may not be a permanent demand for a flair bartender unless he's working in a nightclub. But today, he can go for weddings, he can go for banquets, he can go in somebody's house party. He can do private waiting, as Varun was referring to the waitings earlier. So it's a huge opportunity, and I think that everybody should encash this. And it's great to know that, Dominic, you're making these kind of platforms and giving a platform for hoteliers and hotel staff, hospitality professionals to connect.
Thanks, Vikram. Thanks, Hina. And thanks, Varun. Very, very nice session. I particularly liked the session because there were conflicting opinions. It's not all, really, it's not all, hunky-dory and rosy picture. Like Hina pointed out, that there is the question of social security, there is a question of fallback, there is a question of whether they can, sustain themselves. But like I said at the start, Hina and all my attendees, that the pros and the cons of the gig economy and the gig culture, we can debate from now till eternity. But one fact that will not change is that it is here to stay. It is just like I said, the internet. We can say, it's spoiled our culture, it's created problems, people are having sleepless nights, it disturbs us, but it is a reality. We have the other side of it where we can connect the way we are doing today. During the pandemic, although we said social distancing, actually it was not social distancing, we were in touch socially. right? And thanks to the internet. So the same way, the gig economy and the gig culture does have its drawbacks, but we have to take it with a pinch of salt, right? We have to find out how to move forward. And personally, I tell you, I love the gig economy and the gig culture. And I will summarize it this way. I tell my students or the people who come to me for counseling or coaching or in my training programs that look at the tiger in the jungle and look at the tiger in the zoo. The tiger in the zoo is fed on time. He got his social security. He's got his medical benefits, but he has no freedom. And he has one nasty sign on the cage, one nasty sign that says, don't tease the animals. And to me, that is a nasty sign. You're talking about a tiger and you're saying, don't tease him. Man, in the jungle, you can't tease a baboon or a monkey. And here is a tiger where you are saying that don't tease him. Now, what we have done to ourselves is, as a race, is walked into the cage. We were born free. We walked into the cage and told the zookeeper, please close the gate and feed me on time and look after me. Bullshit. Go out there, live like that tiger that is free, not the circus tiger either, that, you know, the performance linked incentives jump. At the end of it, you get fed. No, go out there in the jungle, do just live your life. I've seen a video, Hina, I've got to send that one to you, of a tigress jumping 12 feet into the air over an elephant and attacking the mahout on that elephant, all because the mahout and the elephant had entered her territory. It was a split-second video, and it's a video that has gone, you know, viral. She didn't do it to be fed at the end of it. She just told that mahout, boss, you're entering my territory, stay out. Now, the tiger in the jungle lives for a shorter time, but it lives. It lives. The tiger in the zoo lives for a longer time, but does it live? To me, gig workers are people who are walking into the jungle, feeding themselves, saying, listen, there is a jungle out there, I'm going to feed myself. On that note, I'd like to sign out. Thank you all for joining in. And we're going to have this every Friday for a few more Fridays. Jervis will send you the email connecting you. Next week, we are having one. We've not locked in the speakers yet. And the following week also, we will be having one. This will go on for at least another 6 weeks. So do stay tuned in. Join us 4 to 5 on a Friday evening. God bless. Keep rocking and roaring. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Bye bye.
Thank you, Varun. Thank you, Hina.
Thanks, Vikram. Thanks, Hina.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dominic.
Bye.
Take care.